Let's have a little read of this article, and it's from the Journal and from the 6th of December. Headline: Gardai created nearly 600 intelligence records on infants and toddlers under the age of 3 since 2015. So, Gardai created nearly 600 intelligence records on infants and toddlers under the age of 3 between 2015 and 2023, and over 1,500 more on children between the ages of 4 and 12. Concerns have been raised about An Garda Síochána's practices in terms of record keeping on children, as a new report identified thousands of intelligence records kept about young children. A report by the Garda Inspectorate has found that between January 2015 and March 2023, Gardai created 587 intelligence records on children under the age of 3, 517 intelligent records on children between the ages of 4 and 7, and 1,100 intelligence records of children between the ages of 8 and 11. Some of the intelligence files relate to child welfare issues, but many others were filed under the category of family tree or were, quote, observations, or no category was recorded. So what are we to make of that, huh? So the Gardaí are creating intelligence files on thousands of children, some of them toddlers, infants. And the Gardaí, for whatever reason, have taken it upon themselves to create intelligence profiles, intelligence reports, intelligence files on children, right? And one of the children, who was an infant, they said was involved in a crime, right? And other, I suppose, headings related to the reports were that they were logged under family tree, right? So because the child is part of a family, they're creating intelligence reports on children, which means they're watching kids, right? And you might say, well, look, there are some families that are just criminals all day long, and there's not a good one that come out of it, and there's a bit of bother with every single one of the family members. Right, fair enough. There absolutely is those instances, right? But does that allow for the guards then to prejudge a child from a family and begin to develop intelligence around that child prior to the child engaging in anything criminal, right? Is that a good use of time, right? And you might say, yeah, well, look, you're kind of preempting it and you're getting ahead of the curve. In theory, yes, right, probably. But the guard's job is not to play a numbers game, and not to assume that based on who you're related to, you're a natural born criminal that needs an intelligence file on it, right? That's not the guard's job. Although some of the guards, while doing their job, have taken it upon themselves to go and do just this, right? So you can write that up as stupidity. The article cited ignorance of the laws around and the procedures around data protection and all that sort of stuff, right? And they've created a lovely little training seminar now for the guards to go on, so they can get educated in the right way of gathering an intelligence on children, right? So you can look at it that way. The guards that are involved in this anyway, if not the whole system, the whole body of them, are inept, ignorant, judgmental to the point of breaking the law, right? Or certainly skirting around the edges of what is appropriate carry on from people in positions of power, right? And now I think what they're after doing is that Gardaí will need to go and get permission before they open up an intelligence file on children, right? You'd assume on anyone, really. So it could be that. And Irish people love to assume any wrongdoing to stupidity, right? Instead of just wrongdoing because a person is deciding to do something wrong. And the continuation of that then paints the character of the person, right? We kind of don't like to fall into that. We go, sure, look, that kind of a thing, right? Sure, what you expect, what you think, right? So it could be that. And again, like, the problem with the world, I think, at the moment, right, or trying to keep up with the world, is that news stories come and go so quickly that it leaves you kind of hamstrung a bit in terms of taking time to take something and to build it out and to start exploring the different attachments and the different correspondences with each story, right? So in an isolated incident, you can go, look, a couple of foolish guards that didn't know what they were at, right? But when you start to expand that out the way, right? You go, right, the guards, some of these files are designated as, or they were logged under child welfare concerns, right? So, you have the Gardaí who are building files on children. Some of them they're saying is for child welfare concerns. Other ones they're not saying that. They're just putting it down as basically we're building this because of what family they're from, right? So the Gardaí then, if they feel like there's a child welfare concern, they can refer these children to Tusla, right? And these children then could be taken into care, state care. And we've seen all the issues that come along with that. So a child would be taken by Tusla. There's a lot of controversy and a lot of issues involving Tusla lately, or coming to the fore lately at least, right, anyway, about the eagerness and I would say the easiness in which they can take your children from the family home. And there was one late story of, I think it's a report of women that are hesitant of reporting domestic abuse that they're suffering because they're worried that their kids will be taken off them for reporting that abuse, right? Or not for reporting that abuse, but for reporting the fact that they are living in that situation, and obviously their child is living in that situation too, right? So that's a problem. Tusla then are involved in the family court system, which has a no-camera law, which means there's nearly an automatic gag order on everything that goes on in family courts in Ireland, right? So you're not allowed to come out and talk about these things if you're involved in the cases there, right? Instant contempt of court sort of thing, right? So if children are taken, they get involved in Tusla, they get involved with the family courts when there's very, very little oversight as to the legitimacy of things, right? The fairness of things that go on in the family court. If the child then is taken into care, they'll look for fostering first, which rarely happens, right? It's difficult to get kids fostered. Foster placements break down. Foster placements are questionable as well, right? You see fostering being advertised, right? There's monetary gain to be had from fostering, and there's continued monetary gain if you are fostering a child for many, many, many years but decide not to adopt, right? You can stay in the category of fostering and you'll continue to get paid for that, right? So whether all foster parents' hearts are in the right place or not, up for debate, right? Certainly up for debate. But most kids won't get fostered, right? And they'll end up in state care, they'll end up in a residential home, or they will end up in emergency placement, which is B&B, hotels, and some of these residential units or residential homes or emergency placement homes that have been funded, built up and propped up. And we've seen these reports over the last year or so. By your money, Roderick O'Gorman funds these things. I think there was 7 or 8 of these little companies that came and got into the business of looking after kids that are in state care, right? And a lot of these companies were built up by people from Africa who came over here with fraudulent paperwork, right? The qualifications, the references, I suppose, the clearances didn't pan out, right? So they did not have the ability, according to Irish law, to be able to engage in the business and the practice that they were getting funded by Roderick O'Gorman and by you to do, right? Not only that, but you see the report as well from social care workers, social workers who were involved with kids in care. And those that are in emergency accommodation, they were being collected by gangs of men in cars, right? And they were trafficked around the place. They were exploited sexually by these gangs of men. So, and not only that then, right? So if a child goes into care, they're going to have a social work department, they'll have a social worker, they will have an MDT, a multidisciplinary team involved in the child, which is like psychiatrists, psychologists, occupational therapy, all that stuff, right? Speech and language stuff. And now that's not even safe, right? Because you've the story of your man from CAMS, the psychiatrist or psychologist from CAMS, who was grooming and raping one of his clients, right? So how deep does that go? Because a while ago, people would have said, look, there's no way people are at that. He's a well-educated people working as psychiatrists and psychologists and doctors and politicians and all that. They're well-educated. They have money. There's all that stuff. They're good tier in society. They wouldn't engage in any of that stuff, right? Now you have a precedent that's after been said and accepted and acknowledged, right? That there absolutely is people in these positions that do engage in the scummiest of things, right? So this is back to the guards then. So what are they doing? Right? What are they doing? You also then, I suppose the peak of it then would be the Minister for Children and stuff, right? And what you have there is someone that is perfectly willing, like Roderick O'Gorman and his team, to delete evidence and delete files that were sent to him by a retiring judge from family court, who was so concerned with the level of abuse and the potential for the level of abuse and exploitation from children in these settings, that he broke the code essentially and forwarded on these cases, anonymized the names in them, as far as I understand it. And Roderick O'Gorman received 4 of these files, and he deleted 75% of them. He deleted 3 of them, right? Citing GDPR stuff, right? So all the way up the chain, there are hazards in every step of a child being involved with the state, with the government. So from Roderick O'Gorman, who's happy to delete files, never answer questions about missing children. There's ridiculous numbers of missing children in state care. I'm yet to see him sit down and talk seriously about that under his watch. So from the very tippy top, right, all the way down, from politicians covering things up, hiding things, misplacing things, deleting things, not talking about things, not doing their jobs properly, not protecting children, down to the social work departments, Tusla, residential units, emergency placement accommodation, all that sort of the social care setting, right? Scummy stuff going on. People that aren't qualified, people who are overseeing children being trafficked around the place. They go to CAMS then to get an assessment, and there's the potential for them being groomed and raped. All the way up and down the line, right? So what are the guards doing? Are the guards involved in this? Are some of the guards involved in procuring children or making it easier for Tusla to take children? Is that what they're doing by creating these intelligence files and reports? And again, when you take it as an isolated incident, you can write it off as clumsiness. But when you start to contextualize it into what's going on in this country and overseas as well, because we're in bed with that sort of, look, the amount of international trafficking rings that are getting busted up around the continent and in Ireland. Ireland then falling near the bottom end of the spectrum in terms of how well we manage and how well we combat human trafficking. We're known as one of the worst countries in Europe for battling that sort of thing, right? So it's no wonder that these things are going on here. So is this what some of these Gardaí are involved in? We've seen guards, drugs going missing out of evidence rooms, members of the GSOC, right, hanging around with, partying with the monk, right? These kinds of things. Word on the street would tell you an awful amount of things of what some Gardaí in towns and villages are up to in cities, right? There is loads of drugs going missing. There is load of criminal activity, false tickets being written, all that sort of stuff, right? All those sorts of things. The Gardaí are leaving in droves. They've no confidence in what they're doing. They're selling passports to people. Right? Crazy stuff. So is it too far a stretch to assume that some of these people might be involved in making it easier for the state apparatus to come and take children out of family homes? Is that too much of a stretch for people? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. Is that what we're looking at here?